I am Billie Jean Bracht, and I came to WKY TV in 1959. I had a lot of good luck coming to them. I worked at Channel 9, and I told the mechanic that I wanted to work over there, and he said, well, just give me time, and when there's an opening, I will tell them about you. So about a year and a half later, he called to tell me that they will probably be calling you. Mr. Duskin did. So I went up for an interview and told them what I had done in my printing class at school. I learned printing in the trade class at Central High School. So later on, I went up for my interview, and it turned out real well, but I was scared to death. I didn't know many of the people. In fact, I didn't know but one or two. I went in to sit down in the coffee shop, and I was by myself. Nobody even paid any attention to me. And pretty soon, Jim Williams walked in, got his coffee, and he turned around and looked, and he said, "May I sit with you?" Well, it just scared me to death, but it thrilled me also. But now to get back to work, I was given a very small little place for my domain, and Mr. Bagwell called it my castle. But anyway, I started working on the machine, and I was very pleased with it. And it was a little bit different model, but I worked at Western Bank and Office Supply, and they had offset machines, which I had to learn that all above what I had learned at school. I really ran a one-woman's print shop. I did all the calling and ordering of my supplies, because nobody else knew what to order if I asked for it. So it turned in that it was paper stock, it was different colors of ink, and I had to take some of my work down to Opubco because I didn't have a cutter, and I needed one. So Mr. Duskin told me if I found a cutter, they would buy it. So I looked around and I found one, and that cut out sending all of our stuff down to Opubco to finish up the work I did in printing. But in printing, I did all the printing for the accounting department, and the sales department had lots of printing done, especially when they found out that I could do color work. And I would even do outside jobs for nearly every person in the building. But I did love to work there at WKY TV. We were always so friendly, and it just seemed like a big family to me. We had lots of fun, we laughed, and it was great. And then I printed the names tags for the little children who came to see Foreman Scotty. And then later on, I got the job of taking them down to the studio, and the ones that had birthdays, I had to lift them up on Woody. Sometimes that was pretty hard when you had a plump little child wanting up on Woody. But it was all in fun. Danny Williams asked me one day if I had a dress that he could have to take his place for a character in the Foreman Scotty's show. And I did have one. I went home and I had a coat dress, which that's the one that buttons down the front. And he was very pleased with it. So he had a character to do, a woman. and evidently it went pretty good. I never did get to watch it, but that's the way it goes. And by the way, Danny never did offer my dress back to me. But to go on, I used to do the Saturday night tickets for the wrestling, and that was kind of exciting because there are times I would be working late, and here come the wrestlers. And honest to Pete, one of them had legs as big as logs, and he was right in front of me walking up to the station, and he opened the door for me, and he had the sweetest little voice. It kind of threw me. But anyway, I had my little boy with me, and he wanted to go and watch the wrestling in the audience. So I let him go, and one of the officers said he'd watch him. So that was the time that they found a tooth in the curtain of the dressing room. And that was kind of funny because nothing could have been other than a fight in the dressing room. Mr. Willis, who had the promotion job, and he was my boss. And he came in one day and asked me if I would like to do a 4-color job. Well, I didn't know whether I wanted to or not, because that had to be something that really did register. And due to that, I would have to have black on by the end of the day to do those logs. That really worried me. But I tried to do it. So I cleaned my press, and I had to put ochre on, which is yellow. And that had to be the first color that you put on. And you can't see what you're printing half the time with that color against white. But anyway, I did it, and then I cleaned the press and put red on. Red. And not much of it registered at all. And I couldn't figure that out. So I went ahead and put my blue and then my black on, and that was a mess. It's just like when you see on the move the newspaper. Sometimes they don't get those colors to match up, and women have their lipstick up in their mustache area. So it's kind of hard to do. So Monday morning, I went in and I apologized to Mr. Willis because it was a bad job. And I said, if you will buy some paper and let me try it again, I'll come in on Saturday and Sunday so I can print the colors without having to do a log. So he did and I did, and Monday morning I was so proud that I had a beautiful 4-color job. After I printed my 4-color job, I was very, very proud of it. But I found out that we couldn't use them because the show that this person had this printing for, he was fired the next day. And this company wasn't even interested in my 4-color job. But I was proud of it anyway. I took a few home myself. But later on, this person called me and he asked me if he could have them. Or really, he asked first what we were going to do with them, and I told him we couldn't use them anymore because you're not with this company anymore. This person called me after about a week or so, and he asked me what we were going to do with the 4-color job. And I said, well, we can't use it anymore, but I don't know, it's sitting here. And he said, well, could I have them? And I said, oh heavens, I wouldn't want to be responsible for letting you have them without getting permission. And he said, okay. He said, let me know what you find out. So I went to Mr. Willis and I told him that this person would like to have those pictures and asked me if I could give them to him. And I told him that I would have to have permission. I would never do that without you people knowing it. And he said, well, says give him a few, that's all right. So I went back to my room and I called him. And when he answered, it was a woman. And I knew it was him. So I just told him that I was looking for you and the person that called me. And later on, he called me back. So I told him that I could give him some. I couldn't give him all. And he thanked me and gave me directions to his house to give them to him. So I did, and I gave him about half of them, but I still have a lot left. But anyway, that is the story of getting rid of my 4-color job. One day I went down to the switchboard, and Ron King and Louise were in deep conversation, and I listened in. He was having trouble with his car, and he was having to take it in all the time because his doors were getting loose, and the mechanic couldn't figure it out, but he was going in and get his car doors fixed again. So later on, Ron came in and he had his children with him, and he needed to come in and get something out of his office. So while he was up there, Louise looked out and his children were hanging on the doors. They were just having a ball hanging on those doors. And Louise thought that was really funny. And by the time Ron come back down, they were back in the back seat just like little angels. So Louise told me about the trouble about having that, and said, those kids are hanging on that car door and they have no idea what's causing it. So we laughed about it, and finally Louise told Ron that that's what was loosening his car doors, was children hanging on to it while he wasn't around. We had a laugh over that for ages. Really funny. Mr. Bagwell came up to me and he says, I hear you want that press. And I got kind of jidgety. I didn't want to say anything because I knew Mr. Duskin would be very upset with me. But nothing came of it, and I guess he was told not to say anything to me. I don't know. But I got my press, and we took it home, and I did outside work in my garage. So I was really a happy camper with that. Well, all the years that I worked with Channel 4 and the radio station, I met a lot of people that I dearly love. I see them from time to time now, and it's wonderful to see them. I just don't know all the different places that I have worked, that this was the most wonderful place. They were for each other, and if you needed help, you knew where you could get it. And I've had so much help with the people out there, and I just really, I looked forward to it. My husband had told people that Billie Jean loves to get up on Monday morning and go to work. And on vacations, I couldn't hardly wait to get back to work. That's just how much I really did enjoy my people and my work. And I remember the time when Foreman Scotty had already left the station, but I was in a grocery store one day, and I was reaching way over a, a stack of oranges, and I was looking to get some better ones and all that, and all of a sudden I heard this voice, and I was still hung over these oranges, and I looked up, and Foreman Scotty was right there, right in my face. He was looking for oranges too, and I hadn't seen him in so long, and it just really surprised me. But he introduced me to his wife, and that's the last time I saw him. But I really remembered that because he always came to me when he had some ideas to get some printing done and carry on his Foreman Scotty name. And I appreciated that too. So the family, you just will never know how much you appreciated them, and you just knew that it was just wonderful to be around all of these people. And Mr. Bagwell, who was our boss, he always came down and had lunch with us. Well, I'll say he came down and sat with us while we ate. But he would tell stories and all this, that, and the other. And he was telling me one time, that he was telling all of us really, that he was in California, and he was staying with a family that used to work here and have a business. And the man's wife was an artist, and she was having a show of her artistry, I should say, and she painted. And Mr. Bagwell asked him if he could buy some. And he said, no, she will not sell a thing, not even to you. And you being one of our best friends, she will not sell a thing. Well, I knew this lady, and I just thought, well, I'll sit here and listen to this story, but I'll have to tell him when he's through that I know her. So when he was through, he couldn't believe that he couldn't get any saucers, a cup, or anything that she painted. So I said, well, I know her, and I have 3 of her paintings. And I said he could have fallen out of his chair when I told him I had 3 of them. So I was so tickled I couldn't hold back. I was just really glad about that. So when I got home that night, I called my mother, and I told her what he had said, and she said, well, sis, give him one of the paintings. They were really hers, but she had them over at my place, and said, give her, or both of them, one of the paintings. So that night, I took the little powder jar, and I put it in a box, and I fixed it up real nice, and I put on the card, Mr. and Mrs. Bagwell. So yet the next day, I took it into his office, and he wasn't there. His secretary wasn't there, and it turned out real good. I put the present on the desk, and he asked his secretary about it, and she didn't know anything about it. But with Mrs. Bagwell's name on it, he wouldn't open it. So he took it home, and he found out what it was. And he just couldn't get over it. And they wrote my mother the sweetest letter. And they told my mother, too, how much they appreciated my work at the station, which made me feel very good. But that was the way it is with the bosses and the peons. We all loved each other. And I wouldn't trade my time at that company, WKY, radio and television. I dearly loved it. And I loved all the people that I worked with. There was many stories, but I can't think of them all of them right now.